Hi, welcome to XReality podcast. I'm the host, Dominic Wu, and beside me is the co-host, Christine Ingelson. Each week, we will have conversations with industry leaders to explore the unexpected connections and opportunities between diverse sectors and the world of spatial AI and XR. Today, our guest is Amany. Hi, Amany. Could you share a little bit about your background with us?
Yeah, hi Dominic and Christine. So my background started with the second language learning, and I did a master's in teaching English as a second language. And I fell in love with a course. It's called Computer Assisted Language Learning, where I started to realize the importance of technology in education. And since then, I became a teacher trainer, starting with the many educational tools and how teachers can design for their students, instead of just using it. What could be some tools that teachers can use in order to design or to align with the curriculum? And afterwards, I also did another master's in instructional technology, where my passion was for artificial intelligence, especially conversational AI. And I learned conversation design. I took some NLP courses, but still my passion is for designing conversations, because it is actually the way that I realized that it would make students have less anxiety. And along the way, I also was involved in teacher training in terms of virtual reality, starting with Second Life, and then helping many industry experts creating and designing VR with AI avatars that would meet learning outcomes for specific language learning skills.
Wow. Can you share what's your journey of being where you are today?
Yeah. So as I said before, I started with second language learning, but then my passion for technology was augmented by some courses that I've taken, and also some struggles that I've had. I've experienced with my students, especially anxiety, and it's like being in a classroom and understanding students' needs made me help many teachers all over the world to, like, for example, one of the teacher training that I've been participating in since I think 2021 was TESOL International Electronic Village, where we take educators to social VR platforms. And so at the very beginning, my team used to take people to Second Life and OpenSim first. And then I managed to convince them, because they didn't like VR. OpenSim and Second Life, they have more capabilities than virtual reality because of bandwidth. So you can do things, lots of things on your desktop in Second Life and OpenSim. Whereas, of course, as we know, the bandwidth and optimization, the need for optimization would make you unable to do the same things in Second Life. And so many educators, they were reluctant to like do things in virtual reality, until I invited them. I'm one of the co-leaders at Educators in VR, the V Languages team. So, and I'm a committee chair at the Immersive Learning Research Network. And so I invited them to present their work, and also to have a discussion with designers and creators in virtual reality. And because the event itself was in virtual reality, so they were kind of convinced that there could be some potential in virtual reality, so that we introduced it for educators all over the world. And the thing is that I love about teacher training that we do is that we don't just show people applications that are already made, like commercial applications, and then we ask them the question like how you can do this in how you can do this, or how you can integrate this in the classroom. Instead, we actually show them it's really hard actually when you introduce someone to a 3D environment or a spatial environment to capture to have spatial awareness. And so you have to take them several times. And sometimes when I worked with universities like Princeton University, where I trained professors of different backgrounds, how to build their own classroom in Frame VR or other social VR platforms. And probably after 3 hours, when they came back, they couldn't find the things that they put in Frame or in that platform. And I'm like, yes, because this is a spatial environment. It's not 2D. So you need to walk. You need to walk in the environment in order to find the things that you built. So it really takes a time to make people aware of spatial, to have spatial awareness. And it also takes time to understand the pedagogy, student needs, whether really I need to use VR or not, because sometimes depending on the student's readiness, not only readiness, you can actually put the students in VR if you know that VR is the right thing. But depending on students' needs, why would I spend 3 hours building a world and then my students would say, well, I could have read a book or 2 pages and I could have known that. But sometimes even reading a book wouldn't actually have you have empathy. So there was a study that I've done. It was actually two years ago. I haven't published it yet. It was about teaching two groups of students reading, and it was A Doll's House. It was a story. It was a play by Henrik Ibsen, and the play was about gender inequality in a way that we actually don't see it today. Like it was really, really like nothing compared to today. And she lied to her husband in order to save his life, and so on. And so the students who were reading the book, they actually didn't empathize with Nora, and they actually plagiarized their essays. So they plagiarized. They didn't feel any emotional connection with Nora. Boys and girls, like they were adults actually, men and women. It was just like any reading that they read in a classroom discussion and anything and everything. But I did the same thing, and the difference was introducing virtual reality, building. It's like a memoir, or like a world where you get to see the macaroons. It's French cookies, where she used to hide from her husband, and luckily I found something in Sketchfab that was animated, and also you see a spider. It's called tarantula, and she danced the tarantula in the novel because she was scared that somebody would like break her secret into her husband, and so on. And so we did exactly the same thing that we did in the traditional classroom discussions and everything. But when the students communicated with the assets, or the what's it called, like the assets of the 3D assets and the 3D animations that were built in the virtual reality world, I checked their, and that was before ChatGPT. I checked their essays on Turnitin, and nothing was plagiarized. Actually, the male students, were more impacted by the story, then like more like a lot, like they spoke a lot. They said they reflected, because all of them are not Americans, they are not native speakers, so they reflected back on their countries, and how women are not treated equally to men, and they really wrote things that really affected me. So yes, it was a book that we could have read, but when it comes to the impact itself, empowering students or inspiring students to relate to their own culture, and then come back with something that would also impact others, and how they reflect. So it's been a very complicated process for them. instead of just doing an assignment, reading a book, doing an assignment as something mechanical. So virtual reality has engaged the emotions within these students.
May I ask you what's the name of the book? Like
A Doll's House.
A Doll's House.
A Doll's House.
Wow.
It's by Henrik Ibsen. I can write it.
Yeah, A Doll's House. It's a book, right?
It's a play by Henrik.
Oh, A Doll's House.
Ibsen.
Doll.
Doll. Yeah,
A
A
doll.
Doll's House.
A Doll's House.
Yes.
Or by Henrik. Oh, so you mentioned that in this book, if it is just by people reading it and getting assignment by reading it and also writing the assignment, people usually couldn't feel it and had a lot of pleasurize because I couldn't feel it. I don't know what to write. But by putting student into the VR space and students start empathize more. And you mentioned male students, especially for male student, because according to psychology, I don't know, my stereotype, women empathize more than male. But it's interesting that you mentioned specifically that male students empathize, actually can relate it to their culture, can relate it, and they feel inspired. I think that this is a really good way to kind of immerse students inside the story instead of just read a book.
Yeah, but the most important thing is not only building the VR environment, is also like understanding the tasks that the students should do first. It's like the pedagogical framework that you're going to use is actually the one that will have the students reach this level. So you can put the students in the same environment, and then they would just go around and then, okay, so what am I supposed to do here?
Right.
But when you structure the lesson in a way that you will ask the students, and I usually, and sometimes I also feel problematic when some of my professors do this, I realize that for me as an instructor, I need to give the students the instructions verbally and also in writing. Because sometimes they might lose track. So in my environment, I also so I walk them through the environment, and I do some discussions with them, the same as we did in the traditional classroom. But the change or the distinction is that um, what happens is that they see the metaphor uh, exemplified. So I have a door in my world where it opens, but once it opens, you see a dead end. Okay, so we talk about how at that time the original play, actually, Nora slammed the door shut. She left her husband and the kids because she felt like she's just a toy. She needs to obey her husband. She doesn't need to, and she sacrificed a lot for him, and he didn't appreciate it. So she left. But when the play was on stage, what happened is that I think it was play. So Henrik Ibsen is Norwegian. I'm not sure if the first play was in Germany. I'm not sure. But the actress didn't want to do the same thing as Nora did. And the director was afraid of people criticizing the play. And so Henrik Ibsen, because there was no copyright at that time, he had to make another ending where Nora, she kind of cried and she fainted or she got sick, something like that, and she didn't leave the house. And so that door that I put inside the VR world that opens, but once it opens, there is like some bricks, which means that there was no hope because of society. There was no hope for Nora to escape or to seek her freedom or to seek a choice, because we have choices in life. And the macarons, the bank, and other stuff. And I also put some themes in the VR world, so that students can visualize the themes, and it can help them discuss the themes in the story. And also I put like a question. Okay, so if Nora was in the 21st century, what would be her fate, or something like that. And so it's kind of taking them back to the real world and looking at, okay, so what are the gender inequality topics that we can address in our world now? And if Nora was in this society, how would she behave? Or how do you think? And this what triggers actually them reflecting back on their cultures. So it's more of a culturally relevant, like bringing their culture into the classroom instead of just thinking about something that's Western. And so they really feel motivated to talk about their own culture and also critique it. And none of the students actually plagiarized.
This reminds me of, when writers say show, don't tell. So I feel
Mm,
like it's
yes.
almost like VR is a way to show and not tell people, and then they can express their viewpoints after, which I really like. Yeah. And take away and put the meaning behind the metaphor. It just leaves it a lot more open. I enjoy metaphor for that reason as well. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, because some of the metaphors for students as non-native, or even if they were native, that story was written in Norway in 18 something. So maybe these metaphors do not relate to American English metaphors.
Mhm.
And so showing these metaphors, like he used to call her my lark, my bird, and stuff like that. So what does that mean? It means that she's weak, and so on. There are other things beyond that. And so
Mhm.
seeing these as exemplified in front of them, they would actually make them, probably it would also make them eager more to read the story again and then find more things in the story that they can contribute in class. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think this is very inspiring. And as for what do you think about like for example, like you mentioned that you bring student into the VR space, right?
Mm.
How does this play goes? For example, like there's a movie in front of students, student just sit there and watch like 3D model play, or student has to do something. Like how does like a student immerse into adult's house when you create
Yeah.
this
So,
experience? What's the experience looks like?
yeah, I can share my screen and show you the
Yeah.
experience.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to see how you made it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Like I'm wondering like what the interactions are,
Yeah,
or is
right.
it
Like it's that
No,
environmental
passage.
it's not, it's on,
storytelling, or yeah.
it's in Frame VR, so
Okay.
Yeah.
there isn't much because so my students, they don't have headsets. I wish I could have like design something. We're actually designing language cities. We are developing a game. It's called Language Cities. It's for second language learners, and also it's a game. And we're also working on something for business English. It's called ACET XR, and it's for job interview skills, where I used my expertise in terms of like conversation design and how to design avatars in mixed. So that project is in mixed reality. But this one was very simple because because my students don't have headsets, and at the same time, uh, uh, also, as I said before, the bandwidth
Mhm.
is very important. And so what I did was, so this is a feature in Frame where, oh, well, this used to have gender identity. I left this. Yeah, so this has news, and you read about gender inequality news here, but I didn't update it. That was yeah, I need to update this. But these are some quotes from the story. So this is the first scene. Okay, this is the first scene. Gender roles. Oh, I often go so tired, but it was great fun. Though sitting there working and earning money, it was almost like being a man. So this is like gender roles in the society at that time. And then the tarantula. So we kind of introduce some themes in the story, and Christmas tree in the very first scene is a symbol of family happiness. When the candles burn out, they represent the sad ending of the play. So yeah, it's a really a great novel. And the doll's house was mentioned several times in the play to show how Nora is raising her daughter for a life similar to hers. This foreshadows the ending of the play when Nora leaves her husband. That's in the first version of the play, not in the one that was actually changed in theater. So Henrik Ibsen had to change the role of Nora, or the ending of the play, when it was promoted on theater. Now we click here, and then we go to the next scene. Yeah, so this is, I was testing fractional art. So I was
Yeah.
trying, and it was like, it created, that was before generative AI. So it looks like a woman, but you might spend some time, which is actually, that's the effect that I wanted to show. Like, she's a woman, but there is gender inequality. And yeah, so you kind of, you don't know what that is at the very beginning. And this is the macaroons. Yeah, so she used to hide that from her husband. These are all pictures that relate to the story. And yeah, so let me just go here first. So this is her dance. So this is one of the movies that were about a doll's house, and she was dancing. This dance shows her mental illness. She's scared, and also shows a threat. And I found this scary tarantula on Sketchfab. And then this door exemplifies, so that bird exemplifies Nora. And this door opens, so you feel hope, but then you find out that no, there's no way to escape. And that's the doll's house. And here she is exemplified as a doll. And that's the bank. And yeah, so the tree then came from the bank itself, because she forged the signature of her father because she wanted a loan, and the employee realized that, and he kept threatening her. And then by the end, we just go here. And then what do you think happened after Nora slammed the door shut? Please write your thoughts. So, or I can ask other questions. So, how do you think if she did that in the 21st century, what would happen? So, students can write things here. You can actually write things here, okay? Or we can have just a classroom discussion. So, yeah, it's very simple because Frame doesn't provide with interactions, but it took a lot of time for me to figure out how to put these things in VR and what is the function for each one as it aligns with the curriculum, because I wanted to meet, the most important thing when we teach is meeting the learning outcomes. And so how I can design something that would meet the learning outcomes and would make the students understand, and also, I mean, and like understand the vocabulary words, understand, the learning objectives of the lesson. And I felt that the students were inspired because of the essays that they wrote. It was really amazing how they reflected on their experiences, and how they reflected, and how male students also reflected on female experiences in their own countries.
How old is your student?
Oh.
Yeah.
They're adults.
Adults, like
Adults.
college students?
Between, college students, yeah.
Oh, college.
And I have a question. Are there any drawbacks? This is to using VR for teaching. These are a lot of good benefits, but have you found anything that VR doesn't work well? Yeah.
Well, so we were not allowed in the past. I mean, even today, to use VR in colleges. So sometimes we
Okay.
use this as an example or as a technology.
Mhm.
I mean, using VR as VR instead of Zoom. And during the pandemic, I found some of my students crying because they couldn't go back to their countries. So I decided to take them to VR, Mozilla Hubs, but I didn't have anything planned. It was in the moment, like they were crying, and then I was like, okay, how about going to this place during the break? What happened is that so it was an island. I think it was one of the very familiar islands in Mozilla Hubs, and they were running everywhere as if they were prisoners, and they found freedom because they were at home. Since the pandemic, they couldn't go out, or it's like meagerly go out, and also they felt like imprisoned. So I felt that they were like prisoners who found their freedom. So they were just chasing each other, and they were above 18. So you can imagine, some of them were
Yeah.
20 something. And they felt
But, yeah.
they treated it as if it was a game, but there was nothing actually. There was no actual game, but they were running everywhere for 15 minutes, and there was like, hey, let's go back to class. So the thing is that there are no. So I always say, technology is neutral.
Mm.
It's us who make it meaningful.
Mm.
So, for example, I can take the same, like students of a lower level to the same environment. I wouldn't get any result because I'm not meeting the learning outcomes. So the most important thing about technology, I mean, technology is not the most important thing. It's actually the teacher, the subject matter experts is actually the most important, because they understand how to introduce. They have to understand, according to TPAC model, it's technological, pedagogical, content knowledge, that a teacher needs to have these knowledges. The content, so if you're teaching math, you need to be good at math. The pedagogical content, there are many amazing people who are like very intelligent in math, but they can't teach it because teaching is a skill, okay? And it's also an art. Like teaching is like something like a passion, or yeah. And the other thing is technological knowledge. So when we first teach, we use something that's called warm-up activity. So I have to warm up the students, like, hey, what is this, like, like recapping on certain rules or something like that, and then connecting that with the subject that we're gonna talk about afterwards. And I can't just have them jump into virtual reality and then, hey, what do you think about this? I don't like that. So you need to prepare students first, and then I don't mind if it failed, because I mean, if we don't fail and learn from failure, like how we are gonna learn? And so I don't think that we should say that there are drawbacks of VR, but it's actually the drawbacks are of design, of development. It could be of so it has to do with design, not meeting user needs, not understanding like what could be some of the strategies, and also understanding the limitations of virtual reality, like in terms of development. And so I understood Frame, and sometimes like Frame is a great platform, but it really needs, like, coming from Altspace VR, where there were lots of interactions. And then, I could have created something that's more complicated on Engage. But Engage is really difficult for many people, especially non-VR users, to use. I've tried to get my students into Engage, but they actually not into VR, and it's really hard to download the application. But I believe that Engage is the best educational VR platform so far. But if they have this capability of having it like WebXR, it would be great. And so we can create really complicated things, but we need to understand like students' laptop capabilities, for example, whether they can, because I was working at Columbia as a research assistant. I'm still a research assistant in a project that's called Belonging. And Belonging is about school violence. And the professor, Dr. Amra Sabik Reyes, she trained lots of teachers and also students. And when they asked me which VR platform would you recommend, I recommended Engage. But then we've had difficulties because we wanted the students to present on Engage, and also we wanted to create engaging immersive experiences, because they have this content creator in Engage that and I was a developer. I'm still a developer on Engage, so I had to learn how to develop things on Engage, and it's great. But because of bandwidth, we couldn't have the students go on Engage and present. Many of them were spent like more than 20 minutes trying to download Engage, and then they failed, and we had to do it on Zoom. So I mean, VR is great. VR is great, especially platforms like Engage. But yeah, you see a platform that's really great, but you can't get your students on it. And you see another platform that has lower capabilities, and you have to align with their capabilities so that you can get your students on. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to take too much time away from the lesson. You want to get into
Yes.
working right away. But what I did like about your experience that you shared with us is the door was excellent, and the bird. And so sometimes it's those animations were really effective, I think. And sometimes, I mean, working within limitations, you learn from that too. So I think there's a value in that as well. So
yeah, I was actually creating a scavenger hunt for Columbia on Frame. So unfortunately, there was another platform that I have used my development skills without mentioning names. It's a great platform, but they switched it kind of for games, and it wasn't appropriate for the students. And because they have kind of advertisements for these games, and the professor said, no, we can't. The platform looks really great, but we can't have students because of these regulations and stuff. And I was like, okay, let's do Frame. And so I realized that it's not because of Frame, it's because of bandwidth, because I did usability testing. That so it was a scavenger hunt, and you need to find gems in the environment. So we actually we had someone, Kevin Park from New York Institute of Technology, who created like a digital twin of Columbia University's courtyard. And I was I was responsible for creating the activities in Frame. And I thought of creating a scavenger hunt. And I realized while I was doing usability testing that the gems that I put in the environment, for some people, they couldn't see them. And they were very, very, very low mesh, very low mesh. And I was like, so I don't know. So what I did is that I found exactly similar meshes. And what I did was I deleted the background of the gem, and I uploaded it to Frame VR. It's exactly the same as the 3D gem. And then I did another usability testing, and people were able to see it and click on it and then go teleport to the other platform, to the other place. So you learn a lot from that, especially if you do usability testing, like when you test and test and test, and then, oh, I have to change this, I have to do this. Yeah. So it's a good experience, like doing things in platforms and understanding their limitations.
Mhm.
So do you prefer standalone app or WebXR? More like a frame, like 2D experience, but it seems like a 2D game, 2D but in 3D game, or you think being inside VR, it helps because according to what you mentioned for Dollhouse, right? It's pretty much everybody open the computer and you share the link. So they are kind of, I would say, not really immersed as we thought like in VR, but it's more like a screen. It's more gamified,
Yeah.
but in 3D space. They can see the animation. It's much better than 2D or the text format. People can empathize more. Versus you think student jump into a VR experience. I know you mentioned that because student need to download Engage for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So according to your points, if the downloading kind of portion was being eliminated, let's say if students already download all the Engage, or like in the future, maybe, for example, like as far as I know that I hope Meta will release a new headset that allows types of things will be. I personally will blame the hardware because that's the company who make everything so complicated. But if that thing is being eliminated, do you still think that standalone app, which is that you need to download like a Engage, right? Everything is in VR. The problem, like before I present in Engage, the thing about it is that first I'm a free user, so I have a lot of things unlocked, being locked, and also there are a lot of things I have to. Just like you said, there are a lot of onboarding things. It's like a VR chat. There are a lot of things that I have to learn to be on board. For Frame, it's more like a 2D game, and everybody already get familiar with. You just get in and immerse yourself. So if let's say if downloading is already being downloaded, let's say the entire class and student just wear it, if downloading this thing is being eliminated, do you like the get into VR headset and explore immersive versus
Okay.
Frame?
Yeah. So when I mentioned that example, I mentioned it with students who don't have access to virtual reality. But for example, I teach human-computer interaction at New York Institute of Technology. And at first, I actually take my students. It depends. So first time when I taught, I was kind of hesitant because the students are in the architecture department. And so I was kind of hesitant to introduce educational theories or educational apps for them. But then I realized that they are interested more in creating onboarding tools or experiences or things that are educational. So because we have, I think, 40 or 50 headsets where I teach, the students have accessibility to virtual reality headsets. We also have other advanced headsets as well. And so I take my students, I bring my own Oculus, and then I take my students into Engage or into other platforms. And I also have them introduce to us like they would actually I don't remember the names now of the applications, but we've done like several applications where part of their presentation is actually to ask us to be engaged in an activity in immersive VR in a standalone application in which we can design something collaboratively. So what I said was relevant to whether the students have access to a headset or not. So if they don't have access, so it's better to create something in desktop VR. But if the students have access to virtual reality, so it's better because I teach human-computer interaction. So part of meeting the learning outcomes is that they should understand spatial. They should have spatial awareness, and so we move a lot. I only take them for 15 minutes at the very beginning. And with the Oculus 3, it's really amazing how you can spend more time in VR. So I take them for 15 minutes and then they start. So when I give them admin roles, Oh my God, we never stop laughing because they start putting dinosaurs, they start playing with animations, rain, and stuff like that. They
Yeah.
also start Engage has really cool avatars, like astronauts and stuff like that. So they start laughing at their each one's avatar. Some people they have gray hair, an avatar with a gray hair or something. So they start like, oh wow. And then I also take them. So part of the things, because I also teach VR development, Engage also has amazing experiences, whether art or lessons or activities. So I take them first to the skeleton, the skeleton that dances in the end. And so they, instead of me explaining more and more about spatial awareness, they actually do it themselves. So they play with this skeleton and they put the body parts, and that's also tons of laughing moments in class. And yeah, so I also take them to this chess game and other stuff. So they also learn about rigid body, and it has a rigid body that's why it collides and stuff like that. So in before I talk about coding or or like how to create something in Unity. Yeah. So it depends on the student. It depends on the student, the capabilities in the school. So at New York Institute of Technology, we have 2 VR labs, I think 3. But there's one main lab that we go to for the headsets. And yeah, so the class is about virtual reality. And the students learn a lot, and we all make mistakes. Sometimes I have assumptions that, so it's really very engaging with headsets and VR platforms.
Wow. So basically what you mentioned is that if student can access to VR headset or immersive headset, definitely VR standalone app. But if not, then Frame will be better because download
Yes.
Engage 2D app is very inconvenient. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I saw with my students, but I've seen professors from Brown College. We invited them to educators in VR, and they actually created immersive experiences in Engage. But I know that Brown, they are very advanced. Brown College in Canada, they are, is it Brown? Georgian College. They are very advanced. They have headsets. They have, they are very enthusiastic about virtual reality. Unlike the institutions for second language learning that I teach for, they are, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to say that they are traditional, but they could be. So I just try to do something that would engage students um, as much as I can. But where I teach virtual reality, we have accessibility to everything, even smart glasses. Like we have at New York Institute of Technology, we have lots of things that the students use, including artificial intelligence. Yeah.
What do you see that, for example, if there's a AI assistant inside like a VR space for language learning, is that affect the critical thinking? Because I asked one English teacher a question, which is that, oh, if let's say there's a AI assistant like Engage has like a Athena, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and if student can directly ask AI assistant questions, what do you see that affects? Because I saw at the end of the story, you do let students write what you think. But what if student kind of interact directly with AI human inside Engage? And maybe ask like, oh, what do you think? Like a student will ask some questions that beyond what you imagine. Do you think this will be benefit or not benefit?
Yeah, so actually in 2014, when I was teaching in a Saudi university, I noticed that some of my students were shy. And I started because I used to train people how to use technology in the classroom. I became interested in chatbots. And it's actually, this is part of my dissertation. And I did this study and I found that students liked the chatbot, but because, and as everybody knows in research, that if the chatbot isn't aligned to the curriculum, this will result in lots of challenges. And so I actually, in the Belonging Project exhibition that we've been creating, and I created this treasure hunt experience. I put a chatbot at the very beginning and I uploaded the content. But then the chatbot started to fake some information about belonging or about the game. And so I was like, no, I'm going to delete it. And it was also distracting. So we need to, through usability testing, actually, I realized that I love chatbots. So, and also this has to do with being a technology enthusiast versus being well informed. So sometimes we want to implement this technology, but what makes us decide after putting it in a space is actually seeing the users and how they interact. This is not the aim this was not actually the aim of the environment. The aim of the environment is that people go around and look at and read about the research of belonging, not the AI avatar. Okay. However, the AI avatar can be part of the environment if, for example, it has some secrets or you need to go, so included in the instruction that you need to go to this AI avatar and ask it some question. So it would make it engaging. But it was too much. So I deleted the AI avatar because I felt that maybe in the future it can be better. So relying on generative AI, still, I'm not sure about its capability of having students, especially that some applications actually do it well. I don't remember. I think Elsa. So they do it very well. If you divert from the conversation, they have you back. We are doing this in ACIT XR, the app, the job training. It's job interview training, where I asked actually. I was practicing like because I was testing the avatar that we created. So I co-created it with someone. Actually, I used in another pilot study an avatar from a company, but I got some people critiquing the response, and then I wanted to see if this avatar, it's another large language model that we're using, if it's going to abide by the curriculum content. And I was like, I like strawberries. Do you like strawberries? And it was off the point, has nothing to do with with the conversation
Yep.
at all. I was like, well, strawberries are important, but let's get back to the topic. I was like, wow, that's good. That's good. So I really liked it because I wanted to use like a large. I actually wanted to use OpenAI, but someone convinced me no, just use the other one, another one, because it's much better and you can control it. So I mean, there are many factors that would govern how you can use um, an avatar, an AI avatar, or an AI NPC. And the purpose, the lesson, if it has to do with education or onboarding, the lesson plan, the design itself. So because when we design for conversations, we follow, I myself learned it this way. I do design thinking, and it's actually nuanced than designing for 2D interfaces or like graphic user interface. And it's really beautiful. I actually teach in a German university. I teach conversational AI, but I don't. So I mean, I don't like it when people talk about coding only, because conversational AI also can, like, we have virtual assistants, we have intelligent tutors, and so on. And so my students were part of a Samsung project, and they were actually. I finished the class like a month ago. I didn't hear back from them. but they were finalists for Samsung. So also Samsung did design thinking for conversation design. So they wanted the students to design chatbots or avatars that would help people in Germany. And they were like, wow, we found similarities between what you're saying, what you're teaching, and what they are giving us. And I was really happy that I know that the industry is 1,000 miles ahead of many academic institutions. But I was very happy that whatever I was teaching and also things that I've learned made the students aware of how to design a chatbot. It's not just, hey, I have this idea, let's do this, but it's also an art. Even Google Assistant was designed by a script writer. It's an art. It's not something that you can just design overnight. It has to do with going over through like ideation and all of these things.
Wow, yeah, just like you mentioned that you think that for AI avatar, it needs to fit the curriculum in order for
Yes.
things to be in control. So
Yeah.
what do you see? Like you keep mentioning OpenAI might distract because, for example, like if you add something else, for example, like I actually create an immersive literature experience. I put Edgar Allan Poe as a
You were at AWE?
oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I create like the Raven, the poetry, and then I put Edgar Allan Poe in, and I start asking question. And because I'm ESL, so there are a lot of words that
Mm.
the AI, because Edgar Allan Poe pretty much composed through it used like a OpenAI as the brain, and also use 11 Lab as the
Yes,
voice.
the sound voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I asked Edgar like, oh, why there? What's the meaning of the raven, right? But for some reason, I don't know. Edgar perceive, or the AI avatar perceive, that what's the meaning of a rabbit. I mean, it's really different. Raven and rabbit. I was like, am I that bad in speaking English? I was keeping saying raven. But for some reason, Edgar just started saying like, oh, rabbit means productive, reproduction. And he started saying something that I'm not looking for. But I think, yeah, if every conversation can be within the raven, that would be
Yes.
much better. Because why you keep saying the rabbit, and later on you start talking about rabbit means a lot of stuff and means purity, and it's just like, I want to know raven, I don't want to know rabbit. But for some reason it just tied to that. And what do you see, like for example, you mentioned that you want to curate it. So do you think that the brand shouldn't be OpenAI and should be more like a local, or do you have any solutions if there's a chatbot? What types of technology you might think it's better than OpenAI? Because I feel like I want to know Raven, but for some reason you just keep saying rabbit. So is there any AI you think it's better?
Well, I think the problem is not with OpenAI in the example that you mentioned. It's in text-to-speech. So probably it's with 11 Labs. And it's actually a problem that is always no representation of different like accents in English. Like even I read this story about an Irish person or someone from Scotland who didn't, or who I don't know which test, but it was probably an English test, and they did like 75% in speaking, although they are native speakers, but it's because of the training. So sorry. So when machine learners train AI on voices, so probably they use a wide range of maybe American English, and less of I mean, I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that maybe it's the English that's maybe available or something, without obtaining copyrights or something like that. So when it's AI that realizes or it can discern the accent, but sometimes if you introduce something else like British English, because British English, they don't pronounce the final R. Like they would say car, not car. And Australians, they speak some, when you hear Australians speak, some of them, they speak with a very pure kind of British, very British, and some of them speak with a mix between something that would feel like American, a mix of American and British, because I have some Australian friends. And if you hear Canadians, they speak with kind of like you feel like they are Americans, but sometimes when they say about differently, they say it with an American, with a British accent, about. Yeah, you say, oh, that's
Boat.
Canadian. Yeah, about. So it is actually these different accents that that are too many for artificial intelligence. You need a lot of training, and that's why there is an institution. It's called oh, I forgot, but they sent us invitations. That was 2 years ago, where if you speak Arabic or if you speak any language, they wanted people to contribute in training artificial intelligence and also in speaking in English so that the artificial intelligence can identify their accent and then it can be included. And so this is one of the problems in artificial intelligence text to speech in terms of like I can say something. Sometimes I would say things to Alexa and sometimes I would change my accent and see if she can understand me. And there have been lots of examples on YouTube where people speak to Alexa and she can't understand them. And the problem is with representation in terms of machine learning, like training, how we train artificial intelligence to understand different accents. So that's the problem.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things. So I used to speak English very good in the past, sorry, French. I used to speak French very well in the past. And after many years, it's really hard for me to speak. And so I sometimes use a ChatGPT to practice French. And ChatGPT doesn't realize that it doesn't speak with a good accent. It doesn't speak French with a good accent. And sometimes, and sometimes you also need to align ChatGPT with a certain accent. So, for example, or a certain dialect in French, because French is spoken in France, of course, it's the main country, and then Africa, many countries in Africa as a second language. Sometimes it could be first language, and also in Quebec. And Parisians, they when they speak, they have this type of way. Like for example, when they say I am, they say je suis, but actually Parisians don't say je suis, they say suis. And you need to draw ChatGPT's attention to this fact. And I was like, why are you talking this way? You know, Parisians say this. And so, yeah, I know Parisians. So you need to draw ChatGPT's attention through prompt engineering on
Yeah.
how to speak in a certain way. And sometimes I don't trust ChatGPT because even in English, sometimes it would say something that I feel like, I don't know, I don't trust it. Sometimes I need to verify the information or verify the expression because it could have been drawn from anything or it could have been drawn from standard French.
Yeah.
Standard French, they use something that's called passé simple, which is not used in spoken French. And so it's really crazy dealing with generative AI and having this knowledge, the metacognitive knowledge of how to use it and how to align it with the curriculum is very important. And also understanding that AI might not understand some people. Even in my research, in my pilot study, OpenAI didn't understand the students, some of my students, and I had to repeat the question. Some of them had heavy accent. They were just level B, which means that they're not yet speaking the language in a way that could be understood. So yeah, it's one of the problems in AI until now.
I I saw like in Taiwan, I saw they have a lot of like a advertising for an app. It's like a meta human on your phone, and you can practice English with the kind of English tutor AI. And a lot of my friends, they just said that, oh, before they probably need to go to a very expensive, after school and talk to a foreigner, like, I mean, people who was born natively speaking English natively, but now they just download this app. So do you see that any benefit for example, like Asian people download whatever very cheap, like a app that designed for ESL to just practice?
Yeah, okay. So in 2019, I did a project with one of my colleagues. She's from Taiwan. And we did it's a second language learning app, but it's still on Figma. And it was kind of an improvement of Mondly. And she showed me lots of applications in Taiwan where you can speak with an AI avatar. Of course, I mean, it's very useful. It's very useful because so AI as an intelligent agent is really good because and I hate to say this because sometimes teachers I mean, we are humans and we have emotions. And you may see some students hate learning languages because of their teacher. And the AI is designed to be empathetic and to apologize. And I ask ChatGPT the same questions and, oh, I don't like this name. Generate something. So for example, I want AI to help me brainstorm something, and then also generative AI sometimes drives me crazy because I would say I needed conversational and American, please. And then it starts generating something for me that I don't like. I don't feel like this could be something. Sometimes if you think the American way, I have many American friends who they have very cool research titles. And I'm like, I have this research and I just want to introduce it with this, like a question or something, which can be very attractive. And generative AI really helps if you know how to use the prompt engineering, and it really helps. And sometimes I would say, I don't understand this. Can you rephrase it? Can you say it to a 6-year-old? This is something that I've discovered, and I've seen many people also realizing that, and it starts to use imagery in like floral language. Imagine that you are walking and doing this and that. I also sometimes when I create the coding exercises for students, I'm like, okay, so these students are non-native speakers, and I'm also a non-native speaker. So can you explain this with a metaphor so that I can, and my students also use ChatGPT a lot, not only for learning languages, but for other things. So it's really helpful because it's, uh, well, it can offload many tasks from the teacher, and also we can learn many things from them. So I was actually accepted in a fellowship by Kaggle. It was acquired by Google, and this is for data science. And my project was actually creating an ESL teacher that would follow TBLT, task-based language teaching, in their response. And I feel like I was successful in doing this. And it was actually, I used open AI API key to generate the responses and to do. So it's kind of a prompt engineering coding. But I felt like, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways in which we can help students learn, especially that I really wish one day to learn Chinese. And I feel like, or like, I think you're right. You use modern Chinese because this is what my Taiwanese students told me. And so I actually so when I teach language learning, I like my students to bring their own culture. So I challenged my students to give a presentation. I taught at Pace University once, and I challenged all my students who were from Asia, and I challenged them to teach me their language. And it was really an amazing experience. They made presentations, and they taught me like the art of teaching Chinese Mandarin, and it was really beautiful. And I was like, how can ChatGPT teach me that? Because I felt like, oh, if I know the rules, I would be able to learn this. But I think one of the challenges is that would it replace teachers in the future? Giving the patience of ChatGPT, and I see that there are many companies that are actually trying to create teachers, like AI teachers, using pedagogical frameworks. And so, should we do something about it? Should we actually be more efficient in a way that would actually delay this process? Yeah, so I was just wondering, it is very beneficial for students, but we as educators, we need to be equipped with whatever knowledge that we should have so that we can delay this process.
Yeah, and I feel like the missing piece, if AI, like when you were saying that your students were crying that one day, that's where AI would totally miss that and not know what to do
Yes,
next.
yes,
And so
yeah.
so I think that's where the teachers are so important, because they get that human connection and cue that being neutral might be a good in some sense, but not in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes I have challenges, and I would ask ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT it acts like a robot sometimes,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no way, I'm gonna do this. So because I don't want to disclose specific information about myself, I just tried something as if it's because this is really important, and we need to, like, I've seen this with kids that they trust artificial intelligence. I can use artificial intelligence in a way that it doesn't make it know things about me. And so AI would suggest things that it can't be done. No, I can't do this. No, I want to be myself. So yeah, I mean, of course, the human element is very important.
Yeah, recently I read a news about Gen Z. It seems like a Gen Z, when they see like a, for example, like a text, email, or a social post, if things is too perfect, they assume this is not authentic and this is written by ChatGPT, and they tend to ignore. But if things has some flaws, which is what human will do, because ChatGPT will write everything perfect, and they cherish that types of flow, and which I was like,
Oh,
yeah, it's interesting because right now I rewrite a lot of my posts through ChatGPT, just because I'm ESL, and a lot of times I just write things that I mean it's probably people understand, but it's very obviously not perfect. So now I was struggling, like, should I go back, like there's no ChatGPT, it's purely my thoughts. And a lot of people said that ever since ChatGPT shows up, a lot of people's writing or emails become so not themselves. And it seems like ChatGPT is taking over your voice.
Oh,
it's like,
good point.
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
You reminded me of a latest competition that's I'm not sure what it was called, but it's like the Turing test. And in Turing tests, since Alan Turing, they were testing chatbots and see whether the judges would say this is a human or this is a computer.
Oh.
And in I think last year there was a competition, and I think it was a game, and gamers need to interact with either people or they don't know. They don't know who they are interacting with. Is this a person or a chatbot? And guess what? There was a chatbot that won, and it used actually bad words. So what we expect from chatbots is that it apologizes, it is polite, and so on. But the chatbot that actually I think I'm
Is
not sure,
that Grok?
60%.
Grok?
Sorry.
Grok?
No, no, no,
From
no, no, no. It was
X.
no, 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 no. It was a game. It was a competition, and
Mm,
these chatbots were interacting with gamers,
mm,
and there were also humans who were interacting with gamers, and the
mhm,
gamers should decide who. So the person or the thing that they are interacting with, is it a chatbot or is it a human? And so most of the chatbots that they were interacting with, they were very polite, like ChatGPT. And so the gamers said, no, this is a chatbot. But then I think more than 60% of people couldn't decide whether the only one that won the competition, was very rude,
mm,
was very impolite. Because, I mean, this is what you see when kids play games. They
mhm.
shout at each other, they yell and they say bad things. And it won the competition because it actually simulated the manner of humans when they interact while playing games.
I was wondering that if it kind of
Yeah.
picked up on what they were saying. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, I'm a little scared of the intelligence of AI chatbot right now
Yes.
because it's not designed what we expect right now. It start grow personalities.
No, we should be afraid of whoever is behind AI, not
Yeah.
AI itself. So,
Oh, wow.
Right, right. What
yeah.
gets put in. Mhm.
And it
Yeah,
seems like
because
Or not put in. Yeah.
yeah, because whoever designed this chatbot did a very, very good persona,
yeah.
user persona, and then created the chatbot persona according to what the others expect.
Yeah.
This is actually that's design. It's the person behind the design is the one you should be afraid of, not
Wow.
AI
Def
itself.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's how I
Wow.
feel about tech in general. It's like, how are
Yeah.
you using it versus it just being bad? Like sometimes I see people thinking that VR is bad because, oh, people are isolated and they're all by themselves. I'm like, well, it's the purpose and how you use it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to say that is not included in our previous conversation?
No, I think I'd like to thank you for this amazing podcast, and I really enjoyed it and enjoyed the conversation with you.
Yeah, our
Thank you.
conversation pretty much, I would say we are pretty much out of script and we just pretty much
Yeah.
just fall out. And I'm glad that today we talk a lot about the ESL. And I
Mm,
mean, I'm from that background, so I can empathize it. And we talk about VR, AI, and also like more like avatars. So I
mm.
think, yeah, it was a great conversation with Amany. And then, yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for
Thank you.
listening. We release episodes weekly. If you enjoy this conversation, check our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you and see you next time.